before. I'm pretty sure I can stick these two together. But if you watch this and it's two YouTube videos, know that I can't even edit videos and laugh at me. So we got the basic idea of what the air units are, the ground units are, and that really all those that I just went through, you can just lay them out and you have a reasonable mission. But you might want to change some things. Things you might want to change is like the types of flights, what types they are, what and like you can just change the airplanes, but they follow rules. And so we should talk about those rules. They're actually very simple. They live inside Major Tom. Major Tom not only is the main thinker, and we'll walk through its thoughts here in just a moment, but Major Tom is also where you set the like really fundamental settings, like kind of the ones that we're talking about right now. And this is the beginner of the mission right here. This guy over here is also the beginner of the mission, but we're gonna ignore that because they're supposed to be the same, and I just haven't cleaned that up yet. And so this guy is the beginner of the mission, totally and completely truth. And I'm gonna talk about every single wire it connects to. So the first two connect to these two little cycle sections. This decides how many times it cycles through. And each time it cycles, it says, hey, start a new flight. So this is kind of how you start the Entente side. And it does a random thing. There's 4 flights for it to choose from. And it does an actual random call. We'll go into how it starts a flight in just a moment, just not quite yet. This is exactly the same thing, just know this starts the flight system. And it is right here, though, that you do want to know about, that you can configure. This says start 2 flights, and it has a specialty. There's always a 33% chance an extra flight gets started. So it's actually a lower percentage because of some other things, but we'll get there. But right now, you basically say, like, how active you want the battle to be at the get-go. So, like, you could set Central to start with 1 flight. So only 1 flight, maybe 2 will be in the air. And Entente to be 2, so that 2 and just maybe 3 will be in the air at the very close to the beginning of the mission, within the first 5-6 minutes. And that's where you set that kind of setting. That setting exactly, actually. Here also turns on and off some start commands. These are the commands that we need to not talk about now. So when I said I was going to talk about all these wires, I lied. I lied. I'm so sorry. That's what happened. So that gets this all going. And as soon as the flights take off, the flights auto start the rest of the system. So the rest of the system is actually kind of already rolling at this stage. And what we get going here. Hold on 1 second while I get this all worked out. Oh no, I lied again. This is why I still have this BS start over here that needs to go away. So this needed to start here. This is the main init. This starts the actual logic system. It starts right at the beginning. Doesn't matter if flights are in the air or not yet. It's rolling. And so it does a few things. It specifies this is a sequence. You're going to see this pattern right here a lot. It actually includes this bit too. This is a sequencer. This, every single time this gets hit, it hits this one, then 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 this one. You can set it where it stops there. You can set it where it resets, all those kind of things, but we're not going to talk about that right now. This is a bit. This turns on. These guys are mutually exclusive. Either this one is on or this one is on. Never both. And they have a handy little signal, which will just trigger whichever one is on, and this handy little ability to flip it. And that's a bit flip that turns it just to be the opposite. And so what this says is it says, hey, I'm thinking about flight number 1 and whether or not it's Entente or Central. So when this is on, it's thinking about the Entente side and flight number 1, 2, 3, 4. And when this is on, it's thinking about the Central side and flight 1, 2, 3, 4. It thinks about 1 flight at a time. And so it's always under the context of, this is the fundamental context, the total top. If we were category theorists, this is the outside of the monad. And it is what unit number you are in the flights and what side are you on, right? And so this 1 right here, when it gets hit, and this on right here, when it gets hit, set those basic fundamentals. So that on says we're Entente. And that Entente broadcast right there, you can see it going to all kinds of places. Makes all kinds of settings that say, hey, every time you're thinking about things, think of them as if you're the Entente. And this 1 right here, which you also see goes all over the place, does the same thing. It says, hey, we're number 1 right now, or we're number 2. So, like, I probably should have paired this up with that A to D, W to Z concept, but whatever, I didn't, and I'm not changing it now. So like, entente or central, if we're central, then we're W, X, Y, Z. If we're entente, we're A, B, C, D. Which flight is being controlled? And what it can tell the flight are these things. This is how it goes through. The very first steps, I'm just going to discuss what these things are, not how they work. The very first steps is this thing decides it knows basically these three together get some status from the flight. They get some information from those units we looked at when we looked at units. I'm going to show them to you again really fast. Units. They get information from there. And they use that information to say, am I currently running? Like, have I run away? Am I scared? If you run away, then depending on circumstances, this is kind of the thing that we were starting at the beginning that I skipped. If you're running, you can say tell one of your buddy flights to take off, and you might. This says whether or not this is like an action thing. This says like I've done the same thing 3 times in a row. This is what breaks that spinning cycle. How like you've seen it in missions, I'm sure happens all the time, where like the AI gets confused and it just climbs upwards in a perfect circle climb, an actually very efficient circle climb, and up it goes. This breaks that. It does take it a while to break it. It takes like 3 or 4 minutes to break it, but I kind of use that deliberately to exploit. I try to make it climb. I try to make that only happen, and it does generally only happen in circumstances where the plane wants to climb anyway. Not always, though. This is just the thing that says, hey, I'm not really in the mission right now. It means like you've landed or you're initializing. You're before that first waypoint. This is the first thinker. It's this box right here, this big collection. And what happens in here is it just cycles through a state unit. The state unit is this box over here. This stores all the information. It cycles through the locations so it's cycling through a big store of data for the locations where the planes are, and it's basically asking, where am I? And it returns with some information that sets up the rest of the system to be like, I'm at, and it's north, east, south, or west. So it correlates to those little waypoint groupings we saw when we were looking at A. Once it knows where it is, it can ask itself questions with that context, and that's the first thing it does, is it says, are there any of the planes I wish to attack? And which planes it wishes to attack are variant on what type of flight it is, and we'll talk about that very, very, very soon. And it goes, are there any of the planes in my vicinity that I wish to attack? If they're here, let's attack them. If they're not, let's consider doing something else. And that something else is, are there any planes in my vicinity that I wish to cover? Additionally, is there an area attack I'd like to do? And the way that it does area attack is that it does area attack if it's in the area that it currently is in. In other words, area attack always triggers if it gets to this phase, but area attack has a built-in component where it only triggers 25% of the time it gets called. And when it gets called and doesn't trigger, it just sends you to the next waypoint. It just moves you along. So only certain flights have the capacity to do an area attack. Lots of them have that turned off, and all the ones that have that turned off will move past this stage. Anyone that has that turned on, this is the furthest stage it makes it to under the vast majority of circumstances. The next stage, after the cover check, and so that last one was really about cover. Sorry to get in the area attack thing because it does that too, but it was really about cover. Then the next thing it does is it says, hey, are there any enemy flights doing something I don't want? And so it sets right here whether they are attacking, covering, area attacking, or running. And if any of those enemy flights are doing that, so it says yes, one of the enemy flights is doing whatever it is you care about. Like your flight can only care about one of those things, but it'll care about one. Like, are any of the enemy flights I care about currently attacking? If the answer to that is yes, it then uses this guy, which is very similar to the first one, to say where is that enemy flight? And then it moves it in that direction. It then sends the plane that way. That is really, truly all the logic that's in this system. Each flight just goes through that exact train of thought. That's it. I wanted to add some more complexity to that, but I actually find that this limited complexity makes it works better. I used to have all this logic in here for like thinking about where the ground units were. It took longer, and it actually made more poor decisions. I find that with this, I don't know why this is working so well, but I find that it works well. That said, anyone that runs anything they want different, that's definitely an area that's ripe for expansion. And I could add new things to it, new concepts. So as it's going through these and it's thinking about which flights it are, I referenced a lot of times, it's like, are these any of the attackers I care about attacking? Are these any planes I want to cover? That's kind of set here. And what this is this is 8 buttons, and these 8 buttons represent the 4 flights for each side. So these are the 4 Entente. Entente I just always put on the top part. Central is on the bottom or on the right. No reason for that convention, just exists. And so this is where you specify what type of plane you can be. And you can be 8 types of planes. This is totally completely separated from what actual models of aircraft you use, but some models of aircraft would be poor choices. For example, one of these types is level bomber, and if you put a Newport 11 as a level bomber, you'd probably just have a very confused airplane. But most of them can be used in multiple perspectives. So you set each one to be what it is. So like the first currently, the A flight, the first Entente flight, is set to be a coverer. What is a coverer? That's defined by this button. It's defined actually very easily. You can see it right here. It's a fighter, so it's a fighter type. That means that it thinks more about airplanes than it does about ground units. That's it. Either a fighter or a bomber, or a couple others that we'll get to in a second. A means that when it does that status check, it's looking for units that are attacking, enemy units that are attacking. Not area. That's a wire that goes to right over here, and that says, don't do your area attack. Like, who cares about that? So in other words, like the area attack component that we saw when we were looking at the actual flight units, we'll bounce to one and show you. This, on this flight, the flight that we're actually talking about right now, which is A, doesn't matter. It's never going to do it. And what that means is that the other 3 cover buttons are available. And that means that this flight is going to cover a lot. And that's good because its name is cover. Oops. And then the other thing that a cover does is that when it does the attack, it's looking for 2 other flights that are in its area. So it basically says, like, hey, if there are other flights in its area, like A is in the same area as W, then it will randomly, each iteration of this, it will look for 2 different flights. It will randomly choose from W to Z which 2 to look for. And so if W is in the zone and it chooses X and Z, then it doesn't get an attack. If W is in the zone, it'll get an attack. But maybe on the next run, it'll choose like Y and Z. So it's a random thing. And that I've actually found works really great. It basically lets you say, like, how attacky are you? Like, other ones attack all 4 or attack a random 3. And yeah. So yeah, that's the concept it gives you, is like, how attacky are you? So the next unit, so that was our cover. That was A. B, our next unit, is a ground static attacker. And so this is just configured, and I'm not going to go into this yet because I have to explain the units first, but it's configured to be a bomber that really only cares about attacking ground units that are static. So like artillery, I think it does attack a tank, but it's attacking like the offensive units slower. It won't attack cars, or trains, or like transport type units. So then C is another cover, so you get the idea. 4 is ground transport attacker. So ground transport attacker is kind of the inverse. It's the ground units that the ground static attacker doesn't attack. And so it's the train, the ship, the aerostats. So it also attacks the aerostats. And that should be kept in mind. So then W, the first central flight, it has a fighter first. And so a fighter is just like I was saying, how there was that attack 2 random is kind of not attacky. This is attack 3 random. This means if it's in the same zone as an enemy fighter, it's probably going to attack it. It does do its area attack, so we will want to set its area attack. So it not only is like that cover one was much more defensive, like it wasn't going to attack an area, and it mostly wanted to cover things and it just might attack something. But it does chase after units that are attacking, and that kind of like complements its covering, if you get the idea. So the attacker chases after units that are covering. In other words, like it chases after units that want to be attacked, that should be attacked. It attacks almost anything that's in its zone. It behaves like a fighter, and it does an area attack. So it also has the capability. Basically, it says, like, if I'm not doing anything else, I should just patrol a zone. So then there's X. X is one of the interesting units, like how I said that there were something besides fighter and bomber. And it's Vanguard and Attack. And it's the last two settings down here. And these are designed for two-seaters because they have bombing. Um, but they do other things. So Vanguard is actually a coverer. It will cover friendly units. So like it's very good for like the Roland, the Bristol, the Halberstadt. Good for actually mostly Entente two-seaters because the Entente two-seaters are so fast. So they're good at doing like a cover type unit. And a couple of those planes, in particular the Bristol, like only have setups with like two big bombs, and they're great for that because they are going to not only cover, but they will attack like important static units that are up front. So they'll attack like the artillery. And that's also kind of why they're Vanguard. They'll go forward and attack the dangerous ground units. But that's good because they're generally faster. And then Attacker, um, Attacker is like Bristol is another good example for this one. There's not any real central two-seaters that are effective for this. You can like heavily load up. I think maybe you can heavily load up Gotha and maybe make this happen or something absurd like that. But the purpose here is that this is actually a plane that will attack just like the fighter. Like it will attack almost any enemy unit that's in its area. But it will also, if it doesn't have anything to attack, go bomb the transport units. So like it kind of has this like primary mission, secondary mission if board kind of concept. So the first W, the first central flight is a fighter. The second is a Vanguard. So it will cover and attack important ground units. It'll really go up front. Then a mobile attack this is just like the fighter-ish. It also has an area attack, so it will also patrol. It looks for other units that are attacking. But it is less likely to attack. It is more likely to be mobile. So it's generally like a fast plane. SE5s are really good for this kind of thing. SPADs, because it's more likely to be mobile, so it's more likely to stay high. I kind of created this variety for the purpose of the planes that should be booming and zooming but aren't because they don't. So like this means that they're much less likely to attack. They're only 50% likely to attack a unit, even if all 4 enemy units, are in their area. So they often are just running their circuit. So they'll draw planes that do decide to attack them. So they can kind of like draw off fighters on the other side. They're good for that. And they are also will continuously climb back up to their specified height. So even if they're dumb and get into a turn fight, they'll still go up to the top for their next fight. And so that's it. So you would set these. If you're playing single player, you would also set which flight unit you have the player set as. And these are broken up into this is A, W, B, X, C, Y, D, Z. And they're split into 3 because of those 3 little flights. Like this one is the single plane. This one is the 2 planes. This one is the 3 planes. And you specify it like this because you say which airplane you're going to be the player unit's going to be. And that way you kind of get taken out of the logic system in a way that's sane. And also nothing occurs that makes your plane want to be disabled or another one enabled in its place. It protects against all that. So you would just set that with this. So if we were doing a single player, we'd be like A player 1 and be the group of 3 planes in the A unit. We'd put our player in there somewhere. Flight leader or not, that doesn't matter. But we're not going to do this. We're going to end up turning this into, even though I'm building it single, we're going to turn it into multiplayer. Because I find it's better to test with multiplayer. The mission can just run the whole time, and like you can go up in different airplanes. And, like, you get the idea. So the next thing that we would do is we would decide what kind of flights we wish to have and how we want to lay it out. And so for this, I think I actually will... No, I'm going to stop this and start a new video that just kind of goes into that because that's kind of a separate thought.